Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Adobe XD challenge. My name is Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe, and I hope you're all doing well on this Tuesday afternoon. Today, we're kicking off challenge number 2, talking all about invite cards. So let's go ahead and hop over to my screen, and if you haven't participated yet, or you want to download the sample file, will be included in the description of this video or on behance.net/challenge/XD. Scroll down, you'll be able to download all the sample files for the challenges as they unlock. You'll also be able to watch the videos after they are complete. You're tuning in live on Behance. Hello, it's great to see you. Hope you're all excited for another challenge. If you're not tuning in live and you're tuning in sometime in the future, also hello. I like everything. All right, let's go ahead and hop over to Adobe XD. No, I don't need a button for that. I just have to click on the application. It's been a week. Anyways, here is the sample file for today. Again, redesigned template, looking fancy. And inside of this sample file, we have some inspiration on what we're going to be designing today. So again, we're going to be designing some invite cards. And the prompt is at the top: design digital cards for an upcoming invite. Include a preview of confirmed guests and call to action buttons. Here we have some inspiration on what we're going to be designing, just kind of get you in that right direction. And this can be used for a variety of purposes, including application design, user experience. You could even send these out as actual invites for birthday parties or weddings or whatever it might be. Who knows? Have some fun with it, right? I've also included up at the top here a tips section. And now that Adobe XD supports hyperlinks, if you preview this prototype, you'll be able to click on this link right here. And I've linked to a video all about UI faces, which we're going to be using inside of this particular challenge as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get going. And in today's challenge, we're going to be using one of my all-time favorite features in Adobe XD, the rectangle tool. I mean, it is a nice feature, but in all seriousness, we're going to be using stacks and padding, which is going to just completely change the way you design. It's going to make your life so much simpler. So what we're going to do, we're going to get a little bit fancy to begin with. Definitely don't have to do this, but we're going to do something very similar to what you see in these inspirational shots. Is we're going to put a background behind our cards that we're going to be designing. Of course, you don't have to do that. You can use the entire artboard if you want, but I'm going to grab the good old rectangle tool, draw one out. Oh, you don't see my screen. Oh no. Hold on. Why didn't it switch over? Give me a second. Interesting. I do see what you're talking about. And it did not. Hold on. Let me go back to me. Did that work? No, it did not. Why? All right. Hold on. Okay. Hold on. Let's see. What's going on here? It's always fun when you're streaming live and things just decide not to work. Nope, that doesn't work. Okay. Let's go ahead and try this. All right. Can't see what you're doing. Yep. Hold on. Let's try this. Let me try and add a new screen capture thingamabob. It's a good thing I caught this before I did. Aha, there we go. Okay. Put that over there and okay, we're good now. I don't know what happened. Technology is weird. I literally did not touch this screencast file since yesterday. And it didn't, I don't know. Things are weird. Anyway, let me know in the chat if you can see this. And I think we should be good to go. All right, anyways, I'm not gonna go over everything that I went over a few minutes ago, but inspiration over here to the left. And we have this tips section where you can click on this to watch a video all about UI faces. All right, technology is weird, but let's go. I'm gonna grab the rectangle tool and draw one out. And I might want to, I already did draw one out, there it is. And I might want to add an image into this. So I'm gonna go over and hop over to Finder, and I'm going to grab an image and boop, pop it in there, right? Beautiful, nice, vibrant image. Of course, you can do something very similar using a gradient as well. Now, next thing we want is our rectangle on top of this for the invite card. Now, what's really nice about this, I mentioned that we're gonna be using stacks and padding, is the actual size of the card at first really doesn't matter too much because it's going to auto adjust, but we'll get there in a moment, right? I'm going to grab the corners and round those in just a little bit. Let's try about 16 pixels and see what that looks like. We're going by the 8 pixel grid. And we'll leave the shadows and borders to the end if we do need them. We may not, we may not, who knows, we'll see. And what I'm thinking is at the top here, we might want to kick it off with maybe a little bit of information about the challenge. So there might be the date, there might be maybe a link or an icon of some sort. So if I go ahead and draw out, maybe we'll add a little bit of a calendar icon, right, to get a bit fancy. So we'll do something like this. Maybe we'll round out the corners a touch. Now, if we're going to do a white calendar, right, we have to keep in mind that the background is also white. So if we just turn off the border, can't really see it. So there's a few things we can do. One, we can maybe add a little bit of a linear gradient, right? So maybe the bottom will be white and the top will be a little bit darker. It's a little bit better, right? And then maybe we'll add a slight drop shadow, very subtle drop shadow. Maybe we'll blur it quite a bit, and then we'll take down the opacity so it's nice and subtle. Now, looking at this, it's probably not what we want to do, right? We probably want it a little bit more of a solid gray, something like that, right? Maybe a little bit of a border. Definitely have to keep in mind that accessibility is a thing. So, you know, keep in mind that some people may not be able to see this very, right? And then at the top here, we're going to duplicate this shape and move it on up. I'm going to pull back the corners. So the bottom right corner and the bottom left corner, we want to pull back to 0. And this will allow us to change this color to a nice red, right? So now all of a sudden, we've got this nice little calendar icon that's looking pretty fancy, right? Now on the inside, we might want to, what day is it today? It is the 31st of May. How is it already the 31st? That's crazy. We'll change this color to a nice darker color. And drop that in size a little bit more. We probably don't need extra bold, so we'll do maybe medium. We'll center that. Take a quick peek. And it looks okay. Maybe Roman, possibly. Right? I'm not going to spend too much time on the calendar itself. But very quickly, I'm going to add a header at the top. And there we go. I'm certainly not loving the color of this calendar. I would definitely change it or do something to make it pop out a little bit more. I would even potentially, now that I'm kind of brainstorming in my head, maybe do a blue calendar, right? Obviously, we don't want this at the top to be red, but we'll do a different color up there. That's a wild color. I don't know about that. But you know what? We're going to run with it. Oh, that's ugly. But anyways, we're going to run with it. And I expect all of you to do a much better job than I'm doing. But what we want to do now is to the right, we want to put some additional information. So with the text tool, shortcut key T, we're going to click and we're going to type out, let's say the event is on Friday. I want to make sure that we have color that we can actually see. Something like that. Friday, June 3rd, I think is what Friday might be. Possibly. Someone in the chat will correct me. Oh, the vibration. Yeah, clever. There's a lot of color going on there. I don't love that color. I don't like anything about it. 2022, and maybe this will be at 12 p.m. Pacific time. Now this is the header and the main focus in this area. So we might want to bump the weight up a little bit to about bold, possibly. I mean, it's not bad. And then right underneath, we may want some additional information. Maybe it'll be hosted on behance.net/Adobe Live. Maybe because we have hyperlinks now available in Adobe XD, we can actually insert a URL right here within the Properties Inspector. So if I go ahead and do something like behance.net/Adobe Live, we're now going to have a hyperlink. And if I go ahead and press the preview button at the top, I'll actually be able to click on that and launch into the browser, which is wonderful, right? All right, so we have some information here at the top. Again, I don't like this color scheme. I might change it. But what I want to do now is I want to make sure that as I'm designing the rest of this invite card, that the entire card automatically adjusts as I'm designing, right? Because I definitely don't want to manually resize things, add some content, manually resize. And then going further than that, if I want to rearrange some of that content, I certainly don't want to manually do that process. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it somewhere right about here. And I'm going to set the width to, I don't know, something like this. Looks pretty good. Now, what I want to keep in mind is because we're going to be using stacks, stacks is going to look at the individual objects inside of the overall group. And an individual object can be a group itself, but we have all these random objects floating around. So if I turn a stack on, it could get a little bit messy. It probably won't in this case because it'll automatically group some things, but you want to try your best to group the items that are going to stay together, right? So in this case, the calendar icon, the very beautiful, colorful calendar icon, I'm going to group together. Command and Control G. Excuse me. I'm looking at the calendar icon. I'm like, And then I'm also going to group this information here. This will be the date. And I'm also going to group the calendar and the date. And group that together, and I'll just call this top. And this will allow us to set up a vertical stack and then add in content going down the artboard. So what I want to do now is select this container, and also this group containing the information at the top. And I'm going to place both of these items into a group. We have a lot of groups going on. Command and Control G, and I'll call this card. Now, within the Properties Inspector, I want to make sure to turn on a stack, which is, which is also going to turn on padding. And if you're not familiar with padding, it's going to look at the items. It's going to look at the item at the very back. It's going to determine that is the background, and then everything else on top of it. And it's going to look at the padding that goes around it, right? So you can definitely dive in here and maybe let's say 32 and 32. Maybe 32, and this side, we'll just round it up to 1/8, right? Now it also set a stack, and because there's only one object inside of it, which is that group that we created, it determined that it's a horizontal stack, because really only one object, so it doesn't know which direction we want to go, but we want to switch it over to vertical. Now this will allow us to dive into this card and start adding additional content vertically, going down this card, right? So if I grab the text tool one more time, I can click. You'll notice it's already starting to adjust. So I can do something like Adobe XD Masterclass episode. I think my masterclass on Friday is going to be 96 possibly. And I'm going to switch this typeface. So we'll keep it at Astoria, but let's go ahead and make it extra bold. And we'll definitely want to bump up the size of this quite a bit, right? Now you're noticing once it gets to the end, it's automatically resizing. It's doing what it should be doing, but what I might want to do is limit the width of this text. So I'm going to switch over within my Properties Inspector to Auto Height and just keep this handle right about here at the end, right? That way if I do add additional text or I increase the size, as you can see here, everything looks great and we can maintain the width of the overall card, right? And if we did need to, we can always dive in here, select the card and bring this in if we wanted to, right? All right, that looks pretty good. So we have a title, and I can jump in here and adjust the padding. And then down below, we might want to put some information about this particular event. So maybe something like about this event. And you're still noticing that everything is adjusting really nicely as I'm adding in content. I have my caps lock key on, but I can just switch it over to my title case. And I'll make this quite a bit smaller. Bump this down to maybe medium. Yeah, it still looks a little bit too large. That could potentially work. Maybe I'll bump it up a little bit. Bold. And then below this, we're going to want to put a little bit of a description. Can't even spell my own name. This is another area where we probably want to switch it over to Auto Height, just so that we get to the end and it automatically adjusts. There we go. Now, of course, we're going to want to make some changes to the styling of this text. So I'm going to bring up the line height a little bit. And I might want to bump the size of this down a touch as well. Making sure I'm taking a quick peek at the preview to see what it looks like. Looks a little bit off right now, but I can go ahead and maybe bump the weight down to about medium. Might not need it to be as dark, something like that. Pull this back a little bit, and there we go. All right, so we've started the process of putting our card together, and it's certainly getting there, but we might want some additional content, like maybe a preview of the attendees that will be coming to this event. So down below, we may want to reuse this title for the next section. So I can duplicate it very easily, Command and Control D, which is going to pop it down there, and I can move it down, right? And I can space it out a little bit. Maybe let's try 16. Attendees. Now in this section here, it's going to get a little bit, not necessarily tricky, but specific, right? We're going to want to put some attendees in this section. Now, if I were to grab my ellipse tool and draw out the first attendee, see what that looks like. That looks pretty good. Space it out a little bit. There are a few ways we can do this. The first way is we can have a circle here. We can go to Finder or Explorer, grab an image, pop it in there. But if you're going to notice, if we try to duplicate another image over to the right, it's going to automatically place it down below. And that's because in the overall card and group, we have our stack set to vertical. So it's doing exactly what it should be doing. But of course, we want these to go horizontal. So a few ways we can do that. We can either place this particular circle into another group and then dive in and duplicate it over, right? That'll be great. Or we can use something like a repeat grid, which we're going to do. So if we go ahead and select this circle, Command and Control R, or the repeat grid button at the top, I can now drag out a few additional cards going across, just like this, right? Now, how do we actually get content and fancy faces into this repeat grid? Well, again, you can go to Finder or Explorer on Windows, grab a few images and pop them directly in, or you can use a plugin. And one of my favorite plugins, if I hop down here to my plugins, get that out of the way, is the UI Faces plugin right down here at the bottom. Now, if you don't have this plugin or any plugins, you can hit the plus button at the top, browse for UI Faces and give it an install. What we'll want to do is we'll want to select the element inside of the grid. So if I double click in, we now have a bunch of different sources that we can pull from. Unsplash is probably one of the more popular ones that we can use. So if we go ahead and click that, we can either apply randomly or we can select individual photos that we want to apply to this particular grid. Let's go ahead and let's go back, apply randomly, and there we go. We now have some fancy attendees that will be joining this event. On a quick side note, there is another service called This Person Does Not Exist. I love showing this off because it's such a strange thing and it really kind of shows the world that we live in. Here's the website. This person does not exist. And as it states, this person is not a real person. It's all generated with AI and machine learning and all this fun stuff. And every time you refresh this website, you get a person that does not exist. Now, some of them have a little bit, weird stuff around the hair. It looks like the algorithm has gotten a lot better. But all these people are fake people, which is very interesting. It's a very strange thing that exists. Or doesn't exist, I don't know. Anyways, so now that we have our fancy people, I might want to overlap these a little bit. There we go. And over to the right, we may want a very quick blurb about how many additional people might be going. Now again, we're going to run into that same problem where if I grab my text tool and click, right, it's going to go either above or below depending on where my pointer was. So we'll just do that same workaround. We'll place it into a group. I'll call this attendees. And then inside of the group, I can now click and do something like plus 392, right? Something like that. That could work. AI is amazing. It's amazing. It's also very terrifying. I've been following very closely the DALL-E 2. A few of my coworkers are posting on Twitter and some of the crazy things that they're doing. AI is weird, but exciting, very exciting. All right, so now down at the bottom, we may want to place some buttons to help us determine whether you're going or not going, or could be a lot of different things, right? Now, what I might want to do here is, now that I'm pretty happy with the size of the card, I'm actually going to go back and bump this back to about 32. There we go. That looks pretty good. So we'll allow it to auto adjust as we're designing now. So if I dive in here, I might want to create our first button. Now to help me make sure that it fits perfectly across, I can either kind of line it up right about here and then bring it back, or go all the way to 100% and then divide by 2. Either way will work. In this case, you can definitely use your smart guides to help you out throughout the process. And I'm going to bring it back by about, let's say 8 pixels. 8 or 4 could work. Now we're going to run into that same problem, right? I'm actually going to go back about 4 pixels. So I want to make sure to place it into a group once this button is created. I'm going to go ahead and round out the corners. Let's try about 8 pixels, something like that. We'll give this one a nice actionable color, because this is going to be our main call to action. Right? We're going to place this into a group. I'm going to call this button. And then inside of this, change this color to white. Maybe we'll bold it, because again, it is a main call to action. Make this quite a bit bigger. That looks pretty good. I'm going to give this a little bit of room down at the bottom. Definitely want to make sure that things are breathable on your designs, right? Don't squish things too closely together, otherwise they get very claustrophobic. We have our first button, and now we want to create our second button. And to help us do this, because it's going to be essentially using the same style, we can definitely use a component for this. So I have this button selected. I'm going to press Command or Control K to create a component. You can also do that inside of your Properties Inspector or your document assets. And for this one, we might want to create our secondary button, which might be an outlined button. So if I go ahead and create a new state, outlined, and I'm going to dive in here and I'm going to select the button. I'm going to turn off the fill. I'm going to set a border, make it a little bit thicker, and we'll set a color, something right about there. We'll see what that looks like. And the text will be the same color. Not attending, very sad. Maybe I'll bump the weight down. May not be necessary, but, could work. And then what I want to do now is use this button over here to the right. Now again, same problem. If I duplicate this over, it's going to pop it down. So we're going to place this button into a group, call this buttons. Dive in here and then duplicate over to the side, right? You can also place this into once it's in a group, you can turn a stack on, right? That way you can very easily rearrange these buttons. So if I switch this over to our outline view, right, I can very easily swap the position of these buttons. So we have a stack inside of a stack, which is really helpful. It's going to really supercharge that workflow. And, now that we have this card looking pretty good, we might want to make some changes to how things are kind of laid out and looking, right? So we might want maybe this section here to be either above or below, so we can just very easily grab some of this information and shift it on around. We can also hover in between and make changes to the spacing if we wanted to. This looks pretty good. And maybe our buttons, we might want a little bit longer. Now, what's really nice is because we're using a component for these particular buttons, all we have to make sure to do is edit the main component. So, and that's the one with the solid diamond at the top left-hand corner. So you're going to notice if I change the size of the main component, the one over to the right, which is an instance and on a different state, it's also adjusting because we're editing the default state on the main component, which is really cool, right? So we'll do something like that. We'll make nice long buttons, and the card in the background is automatically adjusting, which is exactly what we want. And then up here, we can also, maybe add in maybe an icon. So if I hop over to my plugins one more time, I'm going to go to my icons for design plugin. Let's say location. If you ever use this plugin, it's the one thing that I'm not a big fan of that plugin. It sometimes places icons at the top left-hand corner. Don't know why, but it does sometimes. Maybe I'll change this to blue so we know it's a link. Maybe I'll change this to this color down here, which I should definitely add to my document assets. But there we go. We have our card looking pretty fancy. And again, the amazing thing about this design is it's all responsive. So if we made this longer, right, it all changes. If we wanted this at the top, it all swaps positions. You can swap the position of these buttons using a stack in a stack. Everything looks pretty good. All right, that's going to wrap things up for me for today. Definitely submit your designs on Discord and Behance, and probably design something that looks a little bit nicer than this, whatever this monstrosity is. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up. Hope you all enjoyed this. Definitely submit your work. Tweet it at me at Pinsky, and I will see you all next time for another challenge. Thanks, everyone.